Good evening. I'm Gina Roberts, Voter Education Director for the Citizens Clean Elections Commission. As Arizona's official voter education agency, Clean Elections is proud to sponsor these debates. Our mission is to ensure that you have the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates, ask questions about the issues that impact your life, and head to the polls with confidence. To make sure your voice is heard, please keep these upcoming deadlines in mind. October 5th, voter registration deadline. October 7th, early voting begins, and November 3rd, general election day. If you're watching this debate live, we want to hear from you. You can submit a question for the candidates at any time using one of the following methods. Email debates@kc-a.com, text 480-769-9511, phone 480-937-1253. Thank you for joining us and for staying engaged in our democracy. For more resources to help you prepare for the November 3rd general election, please visit our website at azcleanelections.gov. Enjoy the debate.
Good evening and welcome to the Arizona Citizens Clean Elections debate for Legislative District 26. I'm Hank Stevenson, founder of the Arizona Agenda, a daily newsletter about politics and policy in Arizona. I've been writing about Arizona politics for more than 15 years, and I'll be your moderator tonight. Legislative District 26 covers West Central Phoenix, including the communities of Maryvale, Alhambra, Encanto, Estrella, and a slice of Glendale. In this district, registered Democrats account for about 39% of voters, Republicans are at about 18%, and voters registered with no party at all are the biggest bloc at about 40%. Tonight, we'll hear from the 4 candidates running for 2 House seats in the district. After that, we'll take a short break and we'll come back to hear from the 2 Senate candidates running for the district Senate seat. Here's how tonight will go. 90 seconds of opening statements, then a few minutes getting to know these candidates as people. Then we'll dive into the core issues facing this district. We'll ask the candidates how they'll vote on a measure that's actually on your ballot in November. And we'll finish with 90-second closing statements. Candidates, thank you so much for being here. We'll start with 90-second opening statements. The order was set by random draw beforehand, and the prompt is simple. Tell voters who you are and why you're running. And Frank, why don't you kick this off, please?
Hi, my name is Frank Roberts, and I'm running for the Arizona House of Representatives. I lived in Legislative District 26 for over 26 years, and I've just seen a lot of changes in this district, and unfortunately, it's not going in the direction that I would like to see it going. I moved down to Phoenix, like I say, 26 years ago because my family had a pharmaceutical company. We were the largest supplier of natural progesterone for women. In 2009, my family sold the company and we got involved in real estate. And that's what I currently do. I do a lot of, I work with the city of Phoenix, providing housing to low-income families through Section 8 housing programs. And I'm just really, I'm a precincts committeeman. And I'm a state committeeman. I was elected as a state committeeman to represent the Republican Party. I've been doing that now for 5 years, and I go out and I knock on thousands of doors, and I work very hard for the Republicans. And I've talked to a lot of people on the street, and they're telling me the same issues that I see. I've had my house broke into. I've had people break into my campers. I've had to call the police constantly. I've been shot at 8 times. I've been hit 1 time with a bullet. I've had to shoot back. And I just find that it's just becoming a very dangerous place. And I just feel we've got to get some representation in here to look at getting things done. And, you know, I mean, my feeling is I'm always trying to help everyone in this district. I really am. And all I can say is, you know, I do have some great hobbies. I love racing horses at Turf Paradise. I keep horses on my property here. I have a pretty big irrigated place, and I'm looking forward to getting involved in the legislature and getting things done for our district. Once again, I'm Frank Roberts, running for AZ26.
Thanks, Frank.
Yes.
Quante, you're up next, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Quante Cruz, and it's been my honor to serve in the last 2 legislatures sessions as state representative for LD26. I'm running again because I want to finish what we started. I'm a mom of 3 boys, and I got involved in a movement to make sure that our kids with special needs have the education that they deserve. And when I learned that a lot of the cuts and the challenges our public schools were having was because of the things that were happening at the legislature, that's really what really pushed me to get more involved. I also am a real estate appraiser by trade. I worked at the assessor's office and the Department of Revenue as an appraiser. And I saw time and time again how the state legislature was passing policies, property tax policies that were harmful to our community. I also saw after Democrats continued to introduce bills like rent control and trying to make sure our housing could stay in a place where folks could actually afford it, these other measures, they were ignored. And so I got involved because I saw my neighbors and myself deal with 60, 70% rent hikes during the pandemic. And a lot of us are just really trying to make it. And so it's been an honor and a joy to serve. I want to continue what we have been doing, which is pushing to make Arizona affordable and making sure that our community gets the opportunities that they deserve. I am a state committeeman and a PC, but most importantly, I'm a neighborhood auntie, and serving LD26 really has been an honor. And I'd love to go back to coaching my YMCA basketball team kids, but I'm serving them in a different way. And I'm just really honored to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Quante. Jonathan, you're up next, please.
Yes. Good evening, LD26. My name is Jonathan McKenna, and I'm running for State House because I believe local politics matter. We get so caught up in the national debate and media talking points that we forget about what is going on in our backyards and how this system of government is supposed to function. I spent the last 8 years in Arizona helping men and women recover from addiction, homelessness, and the system's failure to provide a path forward. I moved to LD26 in 2021, and I've seen the decline, and I'm worried about our future. Our working families have been forgotten and been forced to deal with policies that have driven up the cost of living, rising crime, prostitution rings, and fentanyl overdoses. I'm not here to prioritize a favorite identity group or push harmful agendas. I'm here to represent the voters and focus on the safety and economic survival of the citizens who actually live in and sustain this district. My family was involved in politics, but I'm in no way a career politician. I've just been noticing the change. I see the crime, the drug use, the tax burden that is suffocating our homeowners, and the emotional nonsense used to justify it. I'm done with the us versus now manipulation, and I'm done staying helpless while our neighborhoods decline. I'm ready to bring actual change to the district. We need to secure our streets, stop the endless taxing, and ensure LD26 is a place where citizens come first. It's time to stop treating the district like a social experiment and start treating it like our home. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. And Caesar, the last word here in the opening statements.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Representative Caesar Aguilar, and it's been an honor serving Legislative District 26 over the past 4 years. Beyond the Capitol, I work full-time at a nonprofit called the Arizona Students Association, where we advocate for affordable and accessible higher education. Most importantly, I'm a proud husband and father of 2 children, 2 little boys. When I first ran for office, I was 27 years old, and our communities were navigating the aftermath of the pandemic. Looking for real solutions in my first 2 years, we got to work and delivered for working class Arizonans. Today, I'm 31 years old with 2 kids in school, and I'm facing the same barriers many in our communities are facing due to the cost of living. Early child care and children-related costs in District 26 has resulted in average household families needing an additional $16,000 more in order to cover basic needs. Our seniors on fixed incomes are facing unprecedented pressure. Federal actions from foreign wars have driven up our gas prices. The tariffs making groceries more expensive have made day-to-day life harder for working Arizonans. Under Republican leaderships in the House and the Senate, ESA voucher expenses under $2,000 are automatically approved with zero scrutiny. We've seen public dollars spent on luxury items like jewelry, lingerie, and even investigative reporters have uncovered payments for ghost children who don't even exist. Yet Superintendent Tom Horn and legislative Republicans refuse to reform this fraud, waste, and abuse. Every state agency must be held accountable when we are in charge of state tax dollars. I'm running to stop the misuse of our tax dollars, defend public education, and fight for an affordable Arizona that we cannot afford. Thank you, and I look forward to the debate.
Okay, thank you all candidates for being here. We're going to move on to our first round of questions, but first a quick reminder to our audience, you can submit a question at any time. Do that via email to debates@kc-a.com. You can text them in to 480-769-9511 or call them in to 480-937-1253. Okay, this next segment is about who you are, not necessarily your policy positions, but what shaped you as a person and who you'd be once in office. Please take about 90 seconds each to answer, and let's not do any rebuttals this round. First question, and Quante, you'll be up first for this one. Take us back to the specific moment when you first decided to run for office. Where were you? What was happening around you? And what pushed you over the edge?
Thank you, Hank. Like I shared earlier, I am a mom of 3 sons, and I've got 2 boys with special needs. And I saw Phoenix Elementary School District number 1 going through some challenges where they were deciding to close schools, trying to figure things out. And they were looking at closing Emerson Elementary School, which has an awesome autism program. And I was looking at sending my son there, but I saw that the school district was looking at closing it. And like a lot of parents, I was concerned and going to meetings, meeting with other parents. I was a PTO VP at the school at the time my kids were going to school at. And after we got to the root of the problem, it really was the legislature not funding facility repairs, not funding the schools at the level that they need to be funded at. It was also the tax cuts that were happening, and also the ESA voucher program. All these things were impacting the school budgets. And with having a boy with autism, I used ESA in the past for its original purpose, but I found that my son was just not served at the private school, and eventually we moved him back to public schools where he's thrived. And so when I saw the root of the problem, that's, I think, when I got really motivated to serve in public office and started doing the groundwork to get prepared and to understand the root of the problem so that we can find some real solutions.
Okay, thank you very much. Jonathan, same question. Why'd you decide to run? Take us back to that moment. Tell us what pushed you over the edge.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I grew up around politics. A lot of my family members from back home, they've served in state house, state representative, state senators. So I've always been around it. I was never really interested in it. And then I moved to Phoenix in 2021. Me and my wife purchased our first house. And that was a really big deal for us. We thought it was a nice neighborhood. And then over the years, we've had to deal with attempted break-ins. My mother came to visit one year for Thanksgiving, and 11:30 at night, someone's trying to break in our front door. We called the police. The police show up. He's sitting, across the street, and there's nothing they can do. They tell us there's, if we arrest him, he's going to be out in a few hours. So I got the impression from them, what was the point? And I don't like that my wife has to live in that environment. I don't like that she has to be afraid, when I work late nights. So it was definitely that. And then I've also worked with drug addicts, alcoholics, those coming out of prison, the homeless, for a really long time. And I've seen a lot of these treatment centers and nonprofits make a lot of money and a lot of owners really rich. And I've only seen the problem grow. So just having to watch these people stand on the shoulders of this vulnerable population that is begging for our help for a profit, that really upset me. So I didn't know what else to do. So I threw my hat in the ring, and here we are.
Okay, thank you very much. Caesar, same question.
Yeah, I think for me, we were just getting out of the pandemic when I first ran, and I was just having my first kid. And when you have your kid, they don't tell you the bills that come with your healthcare bill of taking your kid to go get checkups every month and so on, getting vaccinated, and also, your wife having to go in and get checked herself. And so when I was 27 when I first ran, the job I had didn't offer health benefits, and so I was paying everything out of pocket. We made too much to qualify for Medicaid, And so I decided to run because this was a common thing that was going on in the district where people were just making a little bit too much to qualify for Medicaid. And that was one of my big priorities when I was in office. Under the Biden administration, we expanded Medicaid to working families. And coming out of the pandemic, we had more people on Medicaid. Now, this year, we've gotten hundreds of thousands of Arizonans off of Medicaid, which are usually mostly children and seniors and veterans. And so that's a big issue for me, making sure that we're providing health care to working families in District 26.
Okay, thank you very much. And Frank, same question. What pushed you over the edge and made you first want to start running for office?
Well, it started about 4 years ago in 2022. I was out working. I was talking to people in the neighborhood, and they were saying, you know, there's not much representation out here for the Republicans. And so I started looking into that we'd had a Timothy Schwartz run in 2008 as a candidate for the House. We had a Gary Spears run in 2018. And other than that, no one else has really stepped up to put any representation for the Republicans into this district. So the Democrats have pretty much had free will to do whatever they want. And I decided at that time, along with another elderly lady, her name was Louie Huber. She since has passed away, but her and I, at the last minute, put together an organization to run as write-ins. And I needed to get 344 people to write me in on the ballot in 2022. And I had 3 days to put it together. And I went out and I got 335 write-ins, and there was another 200 or so that they couldn't figure out who they were writing in and all this stuff up and down. But I missed out by 9 votes, and that was in 2022. And since then, talking to people in LD26, the voters, they say, you know, there's almost never a Republican on the ballot. And so I've just stayed very active. I see the issues. I see the things we need to do to make the changes. And that's why I'm here. I'm stepping up to the plate and I'm saying, hey, I want to get out here and represent this district and get it done.
Okay. Thank you all. Next round of questions. I want to know one thing that frustrates you about your own party. And Jonathan, why don't you take this one first?
Yeah, I think the lack of unity in our party. We get sidetracked by so many separate issues when we lose sight of what the party stands for. We're conservatives, we're Republicans, we want a small government. And I see a lot of times that's not the result we get from Republican officials. So I would like them to be more true to what the party was originally formed for.
Okay. Caesar, how about you? What bothers you about Democrats?
This is a hard one. I worked for the Democratic Party in 2016. I was born and raised a Democrat. And, you know, it's the party of diversity. So I can't really tell you that there's anything that frustrates me about my party. You know, I'm a diehard Democrat.
Okay. Perfect party. Frank, what do you think? What about Republicans bothers you?
My issues with the Republican Party is there's a lot of ingrained, you could call it fighting. We deal with it quite a bit in the committee. When I go to the state committee, you know, to the meetings, there's just a lot of issues that go on where there's disagreements and people are undermining other people. And I am always speaking out. We're putting together a bylaw that we want the Republicans to come together and work together as a team as one and quit this, you going this direction and someone else going that direction. And my biggest thing is just we need to get together and work together and build the party and build it stronger.
Okay. And Quante, anything bother you about the way Democrats operate?
Well, as far as bother or what you don't like, I do think that our party is a big tent, and with that does bring some friction because you have to work with people who are different than you. And while that is a challenge that must be navigated, I embrace it because that's what it means to be American. This is a country full of diverse cultures and people coming from all over the world, and it is very interesting to go through some of these processes and try to get on the same page. But I also believe that's what makes us beautiful. You know, it's beautifully imperfect, and I think that of the Democratic Party, and I think that about the U.S. You know, a diamond goes through a lot of pressure, a lot of changes to come out shining bright. And, you know, I believe in my party and I believe in our country. And so while it is a challenge that must be navigated, I don't look at my party in that negative way. I embrace challenges. And so with the Democratic Party, there are challenges, but that's a part of the journey. And I'm excited to be on it.
Okay. Thank you for that, candidates, and let's move on to the core of tonight's debate. I'll ask a question. Each of you gets about 90 seconds to answer, and then I'll open up a rebuttal window in case anyone wants to correct one of their opponents or add to their thoughts. I may ask a few follow-up questions as things keep going. First question is about heat. Maryvale is one of the hottest neighborhoods in Phoenix. The city is planting thousands of trees and building shade structures there right now because the heat is literally killing people. And a lot of people who live in this district work outside: construction, landscaping, delivery, warehouses. This year, a state commission looked at heat rules for those workers. But the recommendations that commission issued came with no enforcement and no penalties. So the question is, would you vote for an enforceable state heat standard for outdoor workers, one with actual penalties for employers who don't follow it? Yes or no? And then tell us a little bit about why. And Frank, you're up first this round.
No, I don't think I would. And the reason why is I don't want to put, red tape and regulation on companies and force them into doing something that they don't necessarily, want to do. I feel that, it's up to the company and what they're advised by their experts and whether they should do it or they shouldn't. And I would say, the less regulation we have, I feel the better we are in a society as a whole. I'll put it at that.
Okay. Quante, same question.
Hank, I lost some connection while you were explaining the question. Can you repeat it, please?
Of course, yeah. Maryvale is hot. The city is planting trees to try to deal with this issue. And a lot of the people who work in that district, who live in that district, work outside. Essentially, would you vote for an enforceable state heat standard for outdoor workers, one with actual penalties for employers who don't follow it?
I absolutely would support that, and I've co-sponsored bills that are like it, and I'll tell you why. I work outside. I am a certified real estate appraiser and a building inspector, and I was working outside in the heat this morning and this afternoon before this debate. And there was a time when employers need to care about the people who are helping them make money. And so you should want your employees to be safe. You should want your employees to have the things that they need. When I was working at a local agency, I got injured on a job. And when I filed a workers' comp claim, I found out, and so did the agency, that we needed protective gear that we weren't getting. We needed vests that we weren't getting. We needed steel-toe shoes that we were supposed to buy ourselves, but that most people didn't have the funds to buy because we were making $15.06 an hour, and it was hard to afford those things. And once risk management saw my claim and someone else's, they did what a responsible employer does, which is have an audit and see what needs to be adjusted and make that investment in their employees who are helping them do what they need to do. And so if employers are not going to invest in their employees, then I think it's the responsibility of the government to make sure that its constituents, its residents, its people that make the state and make our district what it is. We should make sure that these employers are investing in their people. It's not asking too much to take care of the people who are taking care of you. And so I will continue to support it. And I look forward to all the wonderful ideas we dream up to make sure that people are safe and they're protected, and that employers who don't do what they need to do have penalties to help and encourage them to do so.
Okay. The same thing to you, Jonathan. Should we have more heat safety standards for workers, or is that government intrusion in private business?
Yeah, I would say no. I love the idea of planting trees, plant all the trees you want, more nature, the better. But no, I don't think more government is the answer. More government usually is not the answer, and it hasn't been. And I think the trust of the people is kind of at an all-time low with the government. So I don't think more regulation is the answer. There's avenues for employees when you have a owner, a boss, whoever it is that isn't treating you correctly. And I encourage those people to pursue those avenues. I don't think we need any more government regulation or red tape on private business owners.
Okay. And then Caesar?
Yeah, I mean, this state was founded by miners and agricultural workers, and in those industries, unions were formed. The United Farm Workers, the mining unions were formed, and they were fighting for worker protections. Some of those protections were basic things like using the restroom, being able to get higher wages and benefits and working conditions. And so I think we are in a time where this state has evolved, and we should be lifting those working labor standards for working class people. Things as simple as giving people water. An employer should be providing water. An employer should be providing liquid IVs, so that people aren't out there fainting in the hot 120-degree weather. Especially right now, when Arizona is booming in construction, this is the time to make sure that owners of construction companies are taking care of their employees. And I think it's just part of the evolution of our state. I grew up here where we had, some of my family members had swamp coolers. Today we have, mostly everyone now has ACs. So I think we need to move with the times, and that's part of it by passing these type of legislation.
Okay. Anyone want to rebut something one of the other candidates said or add to their answer? Okay. We'll keep
I
moving
don't know
then.
about add to an answer, but I
Please.
do want to say that when you're working outside and I mean, it was 115 this week, and you have to go outside to work to take care of your family, to make sure you have a roof over your head, or that you secure a roof, to make sure that you have your basic needs. And the fact that standing outside you can get extremely ill by just walking from one AC space to the next. I think that we should prioritize people. And so I just want to lift that up, because I do think that the fact that we represent and LD26 has a significant portion of Maryville, and it is so hot that people's health is in jeopardy. I think that we should prioritize that, and I will continue to lift that up. And not just for, workers in LD26, but statewide. We need real solutions, and we need to be bold and brave and choose our neighbors.
Okay. Gonna move on unless anyone else wants to chime in. All right, let's talk about rents. Rents in Arizona have skyrocketed in recent years, and some of the apartment complexes that evict the most tenants in all of Phoenix are in this district. Arizona state law flatly forbids any city from limiting what a landlord can charge. That's a state decision made at the Capitol that you would be able to change or keep if elected. So the question is, would you vote to repeal that ban and let the city of Phoenix decide if landlords can raise rents and by how much? And Frank, you're up first on this one, please.
No, I would not allow the city of Phoenix to regulate that. I believe that that's up to the landlord. I myself am a landlord. I rent to a lot of tenants. I deal with the tenants on a daily basis. My costs have gone up too. My property taxes have tripled on the rental properties that I rent. I pay the utilities for them. They pay one lump fee. I pay all their utilities. Their power bills have gone up. The water bills have gone up. Gas has gone up. All these costs have gone up for the landlord as well. And to then tell the landlord, well, the city's going to tell you to bring your prices down, you'll put the rental industry out of business itself. And the thing of it is, there are all these different programs out there, and I'm looking at this rental thing not as a Republican and not as a Democrat, because I believe both sides have failed that I'm looking at this as a person who sees what's going on. And whether you're Republican or you're Democrat, I feel both sides have failed at this. We need to put more money into these programs to help the people. We need to have Section 8 housing be more accessible to people. We need to have more programs, and I do tell people to go to the churches, and the churches do help as well. And I have been fortunate enough to talk to my mother about these rental properties we've got, and I have brought the rental prices down. And, it's just based on supply and demand. And right now, demand is high. There's a lot of people moving in here. There's not a lot of supply. But I feel that there are other ways to fix this issue. And we don't need the city coming in and telling a landlord how to run their property. That's all I have to say.
Caesar, same question. What do you think? Should we allow cities to put some sort of limits on what landlords can charge?
Yes, I mean, we've seen a lot of corruption in the state in regards to rent skyrocketing. AG Mays went after company for price fixing in our state, and we're starting to see more of these equity firms come in, swoop up all these apartment complex, and then they're controlling the market, and our price has just gone ridiculously high. Families in our district are not able to afford that rent because they're dramatically increasing their rent. And the state basically preempted cities to be able to force rent control or be able to work on some affordable housing for low-income individuals. And so they've made it almost impossible for affordable housing in Arizona. I've co-sponsored a lot of housing bills. I've worked with Republicans across the aisle on even changing some zoning laws so that we can create more houses in our district. But yeah, we have a lot of issues with housing and rent, and I do believe we do need rent control. It's gotten really, really, really expensive, especially for our elderly who are on a fixed income. And if you are raising their rent just $50 to $100 more, that's a lot more than they're getting on fixed income. And so we need to make sure we're including our elderly in District 26 so that they could afford to live in their homes.
Okay. Same question to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think the city needs to get involved in telling landlords what they can and cannot do. I think that's government overreach. They could mitigate corporations buying residential neighborhoods and turning them into rental traps and outpricing, working class families. I do agree with that. It's hard to bring this, discussion about affordability without addressing that, we did have an immigration problem. We did have an open border for 4 years, and that has led us to have an unlimited demand and a finite supply. So there's going to be struggles for that, but I don't think the city getting involved in telling landlords what they can and can't do. We can also, cut regulations on construction and build more homes, but I don't think, again, I don't think more government is the answer.
Okay. And Quante, close this one out for us, will you?
Sure. Rent is out of control. And there are some awesome landlords out there, like the one I had before I bought my house. And he was amazing and thoughtful and took care of things when something was wrong and did what he was supposed to do. The landlord I had before that was not. In 2017, when we moved into a townhouse, me and my boys, I paid about, I believe it was $925 a month in rent. And then because we have luxury apartments going up and they were able to charge $2,500 because it was brand new and they had all these like bells and whistles, my landlord continued to raise rent $200, $300, 1 year $400 a year to keep up with what everybody else was getting, because it's a business and it's about getting income, it's about revenue, and it's about paying himself. And so I'm sorry, because we have landlords that are not doing well, who are not being fair, who are not just in it to, make a little money and do what they need to do. They want to extract as much as they can from people. I'm not with that. In LD26, our neighbors are getting 2 and 3 jobs, just like I did, having a full-time job, driving Uber and Lyft overnight just to make ends meet, just to put food on the table. And it's unacceptable. If the median income is not rising, but rent has risen 60, 70%. How are people supposed to survive? And whose job is it to step in when the private sector is not doing the right thing? It's the government's job. It's the government's job to step in when the things aren't going the way that they should and when people are being harmed by the behavior of somebody else. And so if no one's getting harmed, it's one thing. I think that government should mind its business if nobody's getting hurt. But if someone is being hurt, if my neighbor has to sleep on my couch and her son has to go to school from my house because he raised rent $500 again, and she's a single mom and trying to make ends meet, and she already has 2 jobs and can't figure it out, and she has to stay with me for a couple of months to save up a little money to go somewhere else, what are we supposed to do? Our neighbors are why I support rent control. I think that we should make sure it's at the local level. Maybe some cities don't need the same type of legislation that others do. I'm sensitive to that. But the areas where we are seeing this rigged rent and seeing slumlords do everything they can to get as much as the big dogs are getting, I think we should do something about it. And I also think that if you're going to raise rent, you should take care of the properties that people are living in. I couldn't stand the fact that we had a leak and it wasn't getting fixed. And I had to tell my kids that they couldn't go and play at the YMCA that one year because I got to figure out this other thing, right? Because my landlord wants to raise rent, but is not taking care of the property or doing anything that they're supposed to do. My landlord didn't do anything between 2017 and 2022 when he raised my rent from $925 to $2,200. It was the exact same apartment. And that is unacceptable. And so I think that we should do something. I will continue to push for it. I will continue to push for support for our seniors. We should not have folks who worked their whole life and retired, who've been paying the same fixed rent for years, for 15, 20 years, and some of our neighbors. 15, 20 years, they've been paying the same rent. And all of a sudden during the pandemic, raising rent is sexy and everybody wants to charge senior citizens who've been paying $800 $2,000, because that's the new norm for us young people. That is unacceptable. And so I support rent control. I think that the government should step in and do something because people are being unhoused because of greed, and it's unacceptable. And so,
Okay.
yes, support rent control. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone want to chime in, rebut anything one of the previous candidates said before we move on to the next question?
Yeah,
All right. Jump in there, Jonathan.
Actually, you can't overpopulate a district with legal or illegal citizens and expect things to remain affordable. And the citizens of LD26 are the ones that are facing the consequence of that. We're having landlords raise the rent because of a lot of excess issues. It's hard to find a job. Unemployment's out of control. We're having to combat with exploitive wages. Like it's hard for people. There's so much more to this than, hey, government, please come fix this for me. It's scary when we want people to become so dependent on the government. That's very concerning because a lot of times that just means they take more and more from us. So that's all I would say.
I just
Okay.
like to point out this is the most diverse district in the state where we speak multiple languages, multiple immigrants. And so just some of the language Jonathan is saying is kind of contradicting the demographic of this district.
Hank,
Yeah.
I would like to say something. Oh, go ahead, John.
No, go ahead, please. You spoke first.
I agree with you, John, that there are excess issues impacting rent. I agree with you. One of those excess issues is the state legislature that's been Republican-led for I don't know how many years that continues to cut commercial property tax rates and shift the tax burden from commercial property taxpayers who in 2005 were paying 28%, that was their assessment ratio for their property taxes, 28%. Today, they're paying 16 and it's going back down to 15 if it hasn't already, because the legislature continued to slice their portion of the property tax bill right? Because we're all eating on the same tab. And so when you go out to eat and you go to the restaurant and we all are sitting at a table and, Caesar doesn't pay his bill or he gets a discount of some sort or he doesn't have the money, someone else is going to pay for that. The day of washing dishes to cover not having enough money is over. And so somebody has to pay. And so we have been absorbing the commercial property tax cuts that this legislature that is Republican led has been doing over and over since 2005. And now we're in 2026, right? 20 years later. And we're looking at this situation. We're saying, what is going on? Well, that's a big part of it. And I think in access issues, we push all this money onto the people, which is not appropriate. I will also say that not having rent control and having some landlords have the ability to charge luxury apartment rental rates for a property that was built in 1960 that they haven't updated or touched besides putting touches on the roof is unacceptable. And so, I mean, while I hear what you're saying, and I do think it's a multifaceted issue, I think that by having rent control in place, at least to protect the people while we figure out how to right these other wrongs, I think we should, because the burden has been on our neighbors and it's not fair. The burden has been on us. And it's not just rental rates, it's also the cost of living. And I don't necessarily believe that it's because we have all these people moving here and where they come from and all that. We have a housing shortage, yes. But a lot of our housing shortage has to do with the fact that people are being charged this enormous rent. Their income isn't going up. We have so many evictions. And some people can't, even if they have the money to get a place, they can't because they're not rentable because they had an eviction from this other landlord who raised their rent $1,000 overnight. And so it's very complicated. But while we figure it out, I think that rent control is appropriate. And I just want to lift that up.
Okay, and I want to give Jonathan a chance to respond there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's kind of what I was hoping for was we can't just focus on one issue. If we're going to focus on one, we have to focus on it across the board or we're hypocritical. And I don't believe anything I said was offensive, no matter what color someone is. It's the reality of this. And the difficult thing for politicians is to have those difficult conversations. So that's it.
Okay. Well, I want to turn our attention to immigration a little bit. This is a very diverse neighborhood, a heavily Latino neighborhood, and federal immigration enforcement actions have been visible on Phoenix streets throughout Legislative District 26, at workplaces, around schools. So I want to ask each of you, where do you think the line should be on state and local involvement in federal immigration policy? And to put that a little bit more specific on that, should a Phoenix police officer hand someone over to ICE, and under what circumstances? And Jonathan, why don't you kick this one off for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I think local law enforcement, they know these neighborhoods, and you can't care to claim about housing, wages, and opportunity for young Americans and the citizens of LD26 while ignoring the economic stresses caused by illegal immigration. It's simple math. You can't have affordability and not deal with the consequences of an open border. Immigration enforcement isn't new, whether it's been Republican or Democrat. The Obama administration deported more people than the current administration right now per year. So it's the only thing that's actually new is that the media is focusing on it. And what's new is that we dealt with a wide open border for 4 years. And these are things we're trying to figure out, but these are brand new situations for us. And I feel like the framing of it a lot is that like, oh, Republicans bad, they want to do this. This is what's been going on. We've just never dealt with these issues before. So it is complicated. I'll pass.
Okay. Caesar? Same question.
I mean, Republicans in Arizona used to be good on immigration. We had leaders like John McCain, Jeff Flake, who were really instrumental in DACA and immigration reform. We had the Gang of Eight, who used to be good. And now they're on the complete opposite side. They're anti-immigrants. And the Trump administration has only allowed white immigrants into the United States while pushing out all the other immigrants. And this is personal to me. My parents immigrated to this country. My parents are hardworking people. My dad worked in the union as a construction worker. He now has his own construction business. And my mother was a school teacher for English language learner students. And so both of my parents entered the United States when they were kids. They did it without documentation, but Ronald Reagan gave them amnesty. And so there used to be a time where we had Republicans who actually stood up for Christian values, and that was, love thy neighbor, care for the immigrant. And that's what this country used to represent. But under the Trump administration, it's just gotten ugly. We've gotten rid of our rules of laws. We are just going after U.S. citizens who are brown. We've had bills introduced to target people based on race. We saw the Department of Justice release information that shows that Black and brown people in Arizona are way more pulled over compared to white counterparts. And so it's pretty clear in Arizona what's going on. And we're seeing it across the nation. We're seeing law enforcement kill U.S. citizens and immigrants, and it's gotten really ugly. This district is scared. I'm scared to go out myself as a brown man. I'm scared to take my kids and what will happen to them. We're seeing these little kids being handcuffed while their parents are dropping them off at school. It's just gotten ridiculous. And that's not the Arizona that I grew up in. It's not the Arizona that I know. And it is ugly out here. And it's put fear in our district. And it's just bad for business. Nobody wants to leave their homes because of what's currently going on.
Okay, thank you very much. Frank, same question. Should a Phoenix police officer hand somebody over to ICE, and under what circumstances?
I'd say they should turn them over under all circumstances. They've come to the country illegally. They've broken the law. Barack Obama was a big deporter of illegals coming into the U.S. So was Bill Clinton. The reason why it's all being blown out of proportion at this point is because the media is making it into big news. This has always existed. Immigration, illegals coming across the border has been going on for 100 years. But now, Trump has not deported any more than any other administration. They just didn't make it. Here's the thing. I was born in another country. I was born in Darwin, Australia, and I came to America legally. So I support legal immigration. And I'm often told, you support deportation, you're a racist. No, I'm a realist. I see the issues, I see the problems, and I have no problem with deporting people back to the country that they came from, because when I've traveled all over the world, when I get off the plane, they ask me, I need to see your passport. How long are you staying? When do you plan to be out here? And what are you doing here? And if you're not out of their country in the 8 days, they come looking for you. So why has the United States allowed all these millions of people to come in, go to Disneyland, and never leave? It's not right. We have to have closed borders. We have to secure our borders. It's a national security, and it's just called protecting our own people. I don't have any problem with immigration. I've come in from another country, but I say come here legally. That's my issue on immigration.
Okay. And Quante, you could fill this one out for us?
Sure, Hank. All right. So my answer is no, and I'm going to tell you why. Illegal immigration has been happening here in this nation for a very long time. I'm going to be straightforward with you. It's been happening in these Americas ever since Christopher Columbus and his friends came over here in 1492. And so, when you think about that, when you think about how our nation was founded, how we got to where we are right now, it's because people just came over here without permission from the people who were already here and just set up shop. The people who they did make connections with, they harmed. Many Native Americans were killed. They died from diseases that their neighbors who weren't invited, who didn't come here legally, showed up on the borders and just showed up here. And that is the legacy of our country. That is how we started, because somebody else came from somewhere else and sometimes sent their worst, sent criminals here because they didn't want to be bothered with them at their own home, on their own land. That is our history here. And so when I think about illegal immigration, when I think about the city of Phoenix police officers, handing over human beings to ICE who are killing US citizens, who are baiting suspected immigrants with their children to get them to come outside so they can get arrested. When I think about what is happening with ICE right now, I do not support that. And I think that while I am a US citizen, right, I'm a descendant of human trafficked Africans that were brought over here against their will, who were brought over here to work. So many immigrants have been allowed to come in this country when it benefited the US. From Chinese Americans, from Mexican Americans. And not just recently, there are Mexican Americans who are here because the US needed them. During World War II, we needed them. We needed workers from other places because the men, Black, white, and different, were out there fighting a war. And then as soon as we were done extracting their wealth of their labor, as soon as we were done and we had no use for them, right, we saw a whole movement from the federal government to send people back where they came from because we were done with them. America needs to choose humanity because we can. We have the luxury of choosing humanity today. And I think that we need to do that. And so my answer is no. And I think that until Phoenix PD deals with this cops, like the two who were arrested who just made bail last week, until we deal with the injustices that Phoenix PD is doing to US citizens, I think we should focus on that because Phoenix PD has a lot of issues. And I'm not anti-cop, I'm not anti-law enforcement, but we need to clean up our own house, sweep our own doorstep before we chasing after other people. And I'm not saying that there are people who come here who do wrong. There are US citizens who do wrong too. And so law enforcement needs to be balanced. We need to stand in the true essence of our country's history, the true essence of police departments, true essence of the legacy of slave catchers, right? Not seeing someone's humanity. I think we need to lead with humanity first. Treat your neighbor as
Thank you so
yourself.
much. Anyone else want to rebut, chime in?
Yeah, no, I
Second
definitely
thoughts?
do.
Jonathan, jump in.
Yeah, it's just I brought up consistency because that's what I'm hoping out of elected officials is consistency. And Caesar, you're pro-immigration, but then you make a comment that you're pro-immigration except for white people. Like that's not okay to make those kind of comments. I'm sorry, it's not. You're choosing based off race who you want coming in and out of the country. That's not okay. That's your core value that's not okay. And then I don't accept the framing of an elected official being against the government they work for. Our founding fathers didn't come here and find, all these peaceful people in what became the United States. I mean, the natives aren't innocent, and neither are our forefathers. There was a lot of war. There was a lot of tribes stealing from others. There was a lot of infighting. So I don't accept that narrative either. But with the situation that had where American citizens were shot by ICE, I'm not playing political theater on that either. I feel for these families and the officers involved. If anyone on this Zoom call had a family member that knew about a law enforcement operation down the street, and their first instinct was, I'm going to go involve myself with that, and I'm going to bring a weapon, like that's not healthy thinking. And now that family has to sit there with those questions and wonder if they could have intervened and they could have done that so that their loved one is still here. That's not how we handle things in this country. And yes, it's unfortunate, but again, immigration enforcement isn't new. What is new is the media focus on it.
Yeah.
Okay. And Caesar, you were invoked there. I assume you'll want a word.
Yeah. No, I was only stating what the Trump administration is doing. I didn't make any statements about picking and choosing. That's what the Trump administration is doing. But to the immigration part as well, I was just visiting a site yesterday, and a bunch of researchers in a lab doing medical research here in Arizona. And we have a lot of doctors who are coming from Korea, who are coming from India and different countries, because in the United States and in Arizona, we're not producing enough American doctors, which is a huge problem. So immigration is important. And people like Schweikert have said that multiple times, is that we need to have leaner immigration reform so that we can bring these doctors into our country. Right now in the caretaking world, it is a majority immigrants who are doing caretaking work. And so these are literally the people who are taking care of us immigrants. I even heard, Lindsey Graham once said for every 3 people paying into Social Security, the one American collecting it, the other 2 out of those 3 will never get Social Security. And so our whole system is built on paying into a system so that we can benefit from it. I mean, that's the American immigrant story since Upton Sinclair, right? And so that's why we need immigration reform. We've had people here in the United States who have been working hard for a very long time, and they would like a pathway to citizenship. But the United States has not put that. The last time we saw something go far was when we had the Gang of 8 introduced legislation. And so, that's what I'm trying to get to. And I'll work with any Republican to have policy forward for immigration reform that actually helps people who want to be here, who are not criminals, who are doing good work. And I would just say that's a majority of the immigrants. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all so much. Unfortunately, we're running a little bit short on time, so I'm going to have to skip a couple of questions that we had on the list here and move straight into closing statements. And Caesar, why don't you give your final pitch to the voters? Why should they re-elect you?
Yeah. So growing up, my father brought my siblings and I up with 2 values. Don't ever forget where you come from, because my parents were immigrants to this country. And number 2, don't ever turn your back on working class people. Those are the values that I take with me to the Arizona State Capitol every single day. I've been privileged for the last 4 years to be the Commerce Ranking member who delivered big for working families. I've been instrumental in making sure that we stand up to greedy corporations, give working people a chair at the decision-making table. Today, I asked Legislative District 26, are you doing better or worse under Republican leadership in the House and Senate and under Donald Trump? And if you are doing worse, we need to get to work to flip the Arizona legislature. We are done with broken supply chains to Trump's tariffs, which have added an extra tax on everyday goods. These national policies have directly driven up the price of gas, groceries, and essential goods, leaving local families in Legislative District 26 to shoulder the burden of inflation. I'm running for re-election because District 26 deserves a representative who actually works for you. We need to lower everyday costs, fix our streets, defend our public schools, and hold state government accountable to the people, especially on ESA vouchers where people are spending on luxury items with no accountability. My name is Cesar Aguilar, and I would be honored to earn your vote once again to keep fighting for the Arizona that we can afford. Thank you, and thank you to all the viewers, and thank you, Hank, for having us today.
Thank you for being here. Jonathan, you're up next. Your final message to voters, please.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, everyone, for being on. I think this is what we need, is more debate in this country. So I'll just say that. But tonight you've heard a lot of promises, but we are currently living through the promises of the last 2 years. Don't let that distract you from the reality of your own backyards, and focus on the actions or lack of. We're being told about solutions for housing after living through the worst crime and drug epidemic we've seen. We're told about unity, but watch families struggling to pay rent be ignored because our economy is being flooded with failed policies that drive down wages and drive up cost. The results over the last 2 years is a district that's less safe, more expensive, and more divided. I'm asking for your vote because I have a different plan. I represent the district and everyone in it. I represent the parents who want their kids educated. I represent the homeowners who are tired of being treated like an ATM for the government. And I represent the citizens who believe that a safe neighborhood is a choice. We can either keep going down the path of decline, or we can finally take control of the future. This is about restoring the standard. It's about accountability, and it's about making sure that LD26, the people here, are what comes first. I'm Jonathan McKenna, and I'm asking for your vote to bring actual change to Arizona for the people, not the government. Thank you.
Thank you for being here tonight, Jonathan. Quante, your closing case to voters.
Thank you, Hank. I've been so thankful to serve as your representative for the last 3.5 years. It's been an honor and a privilege, and I'm running for reelection because we're on our way up. I agree that there are a lot of challenges that we are still facing. We are still facing rising rent costs. We're still facing violence in our streets. We are still dealing with our public schools being underfunded. We are still dealing with landlords being able to charge us whatever they want. We're still dealing with the remnants of HR 1 and all of our community members who are constantly being kicked off of the benefits they need so that they can feed their families and they can continue to going back to work and pushing and giving back to this economy. Yes, it is hurting, but we are on our way up. We are making changes, and we can't do it by ourselves. Regardless of what you hear, one state rep is not going to do it alone. You have to be a team player. You have to work together. I've served as whip in the House for the last 2 sessions, and we have done that. We've had real wins for working families. We have done amazing work pushing this state towards true equity and true justice. And I'm running again to continue that work. Things are getting better. They are changing, and we have to continue on the path to victory together. And so I'm Quante Cruz. I'm asking for your vote this November. Please continue to choose humanity, choose your neighbor. We are stronger together, and we are doing this together. It's an honor to be your state auntie. And thank you, Hank, and thank you for everybody who was at the debate today for showing up. And I look forward to seeing everybody out there on the trail.
Thank you for your time, Quante. Frank, your final word, please.
I'm Frank Roberts, and I'm running for the House. And I would just like to say that I've lived here 26 years, and I've seen a lot of changes. And when I'm in the House, I plan to work down party. I'm not gonna be a Republican or Democrat. I'm gonna work with the people, and I'm gonna make the choices that are the best for this community. And I'm also running as a clean election candidate for this district. So I won't be taking the bribes, the payoffs, the under the table, backroom deals. That's not going to be me. I'm not going to be accepting large donations from corporations. I will be working directly for the people, to resolve the issues, to make this place safer. I support first responders. I support law enforcement. My mother's been a teacher for 45 years. She started teaching when I was 4 years old. She's still teaching now. She's always taught ESL, which is English as a second language. She started out in the community college, in the K through 12, and now she's at the community college, and she's also taught at ASU. But I just want to say, I support education. I support our community as a whole, and I am just looking for the best for everyone. And I want to say thank you for having me up tonight. And I was glad I was able to be here, and I look forward to getting things done. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for making the time, Frank. Okay, that concludes the House portion of tonight's Legislative District 26 debate. To our candidates, thank you so much for making the time to be here tonight and speak directly to the voters. And to our voters watching, thank you for informing yourselves ahead of the November 3rd election. For more official voter information, you can visit azcleanelections.gov. And we'll be right back with the candidates for the State Senate in Legislative District 26 after a short break. Welcome back to the Arizona Citizens Clean Elections Debate for Legislative District 26. I'm Hank Stevenson with the Arizona Agenda. And this round, we have the two candidates running for the District State Senate seat, Democrat Flavio Bravo and Republican Jim Bishop. Format is the same, 90-second opening statements, a few questions about who they are as people, the core issues, and then hopefully we'll get to a ballot measure and some rapid fire questions before our closing statements. Okay, thank you both for being here so much. And Flavio, why don't you start us off by telling the voters who you are and why you're running?
Thank you, Hank. Good evening, everybody. My name is Flavio Bravo, and it's an honor to serve as your state senator here in District 26. For the past 4 years, I've had the privilege of serving both the State House before being appointed and then elected to the Senate. I currently serve on the Senate Education Committee, the Finance Committee, the Government Committee, as well as the Committee on Director Nominations. And when I ran 4 years ago, I was really looking to bring stability to the district. We had some sudden resignations. We had some individuals who, unfortunately, they couldn't. They decided to pursue higher office, and so when I ask for your vote, it's a vote of confidence, not just in my current leadership in the state senate, but also a vote in understanding what is really achievable. I've been grateful to rise above much of the political polarization that I've seen at the state capitol. Unfortunately, I've seen many of my Republican colleagues mimic much of the chaos we've seen in Washington, and yet I've still tried to find ways to bridge relationships between the Democratic caucus and the Republicans, even working in a legislative minority. I look forward to the conversation this evening, and thank you again.
Thanks a lot, Flavio. Jim, your opening statement for the voters, please.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Jim Bishop. I'm a father, grandfather, I'm a teacher, I'm a veteran, and I'm a longtime Arizona resident. I'm a state committeeman and a PC here in District 26. And as a citizen, I've watched Arizona and LD26 in particular change a lot over the last few decades. I've watched as this district's prosperity over the last 20 years has been fumbled away. We've lost a viable and thriving hub of community and commerce called Metro Center. Do you guys remember Metro Center? And what happened to it is still lurking all the way down our district corridors with the drugs and the prostitution. That's really what destroyed it. We won't go into that right now. As a teacher, I've seen firsthand the decline of family values and the culture that greatly affects our children. My forefather wrote our national anthem, and I'd love to see my school kids actually recite the Pledge of Allegiance. But sadly, we have a society and people currently in office that don't tell the kids that our country is a place to be proud of. I believe public office should be public service. It's never supposed to be a path to a profession or personal advancement or wealth, and I'm a clean elections candidate. My forefathers believed in the idea of a farmer president and an ordinary citizen who steps forward to serve his country for a limited time and then returns to his vocation in private life. I think that this principle still has value, and if more people did, we'd be in a much better place. I'm here to represent all the people of LD26, not only the people who checked my box in November. I'm going to help fix education, and with all our state's education stakeholders being involved, we're going to get that job done. We need government that listens before it acts, that solves problems rather than manufacturing political conflict. We need ideas in action, and the evidence is in plain view that we don't have very much of that. So I intend to judge proposals by whether they actually improve Arizona and at what cost. I'm asking for your vote. I'm happy to be here. Let's talk.
Okay, thanks a lot, Jim. We're going to start with a couple of kind of about you, get to know you style questions. And Jim, why don't you field this one first? What was the last book you read and what did you learn from it?
Well, actually, I'm a big fiction guy, but I believe in heroics and I believe in the redemption of individuals. And I like good versus evil, white hats and black hats and all that stuff. I'm an Old West fan. The last book I read is called Lord Fowl's Bane, and it's the first in a 6-book trilogy or pair of trilogies by a guy named Stephen Donaldson. Look, I believe in personal, redemption. And I believe that everybody needs a voice. Everybody needs a shot. And I think that the books I read reflect that I believe in hope and the best things and the best outcomes. So let's do it.
Same question to you, Flavio.
That's funny you ask. I was born and raised in Phoenix, I'm fifth generation Arizona, but I did study in Chicago for my undergrad. And the last book I'm reading is in my backpack. I just leaned over. It's written by Sister Jean, Wake Up with Purpose. So Sister Jean, I lived across the hall from her, and we became best friends. It's beautiful because she said, "What I've learned in my first 100 years." She lived till she was 106 years old. We would talk a lot about politics. Even as I was elected to state house on my state senate floor, I have her bobblehead, and we'll even kind of touch the bobblehead before a big vote. But what I love about the book is it reads like a conversation with her, and even amongst everything she saw from the civil rights movement to part of World War II, 19 presidential administrations, she really led with empathy, and that's what I try to do at state legislature.
Both really interesting answers. Okay. Next one. What in your professional background has prepared you for politics and policy? And how will you apply that background if elected to the legislature? Flavio, why don't you kick this one off?
Thank you. I would say two areas, one on the policy side and one on the business side. Before I served in the State House, I was a fellow for the office of Congressman Raul Grijalva. He was the dean of our congressional delegation, and I got to represent his office on housing issues. And I remember his office sat me down and said, Flavio, we know you really care about housing and immigration, but we need you to be a generalist. They said when a constituent comes through this door, it might be their first time ever in DC, but if they're especially coming from the district, we need you to pivot. We need you to understand that the issue they're bringing, whether it's healthcare or social security, that is the issue we need you to research. Today, outside the Capitol, I still work full time. I work for Cavco Industries. They build manufactured and modular homes. And my role is I run a program for them called Homes for Our Own. We're in 17 states across the country. I teach pathways to home ownership, and the company is generous enough to match their down payment on a home after they're pre-approved for any home, site build, if Cavco builds it or not. And so at the Capitol, I try to bring both the policy and the business perspective.
Okay, same to you, Jim.
I believe experience matters in a lot of things. I'm a father and a grandfather, and I have a family, and I've lived the life of having that and knowing the budget, knowing how our economy affects being in a family. I'm a teacher, so I see education from the inside. I don't really get it from the outside so much. I see what our classrooms are like. I see what the funding issues are. I see what the pay issues are for teachers. I see what different districts are. Charter districts, I've worked for those. Public school district is where I'm at right now. I've worked for Catholic schools. I've seen all around. And I think that's going to come to bear. I'm a veteran, so I understand our, concerns of our homeless veterans. I know a lot of people that are in that scene, so to speak. I'm a longtime Arizona citizen. Something I'd like to point out is I've seen the state evolve over a longer period than any of my opponents have even been alive. And that was as an adult. So I'm in a good position to bring all the experience in life to bear. There's more,
Okay.
but
That's pretty rounded.
Sure.
Okay, so one more of these. Outside of raising your family, what's something you've built, started, or led that you're very proud of? And what did that process teach you? And Jim, why don't you start this one off, please?
Oh, God. I've had my hands in a lot of things. I'm really proud that I owned a game store. I was a business owner for a small business. And I'm not talking video games. I'm talking about social games, games that involve educated learning. I liked that. There was a time when I was the first leader of our state's MVD Now program when it was called Service Arizona. I was the first manager of that. I thought that was a really cool position. Outside of being a family man, though, I'd say teaching is probably the best thing that I've ever done. I spent 30 years as a graphic designer, involved in media, involved in publishing, all these different things. As soon as I stepped into a classroom, my life changed.
And how about you, Flavia?
The Homes for Our Own program, truly that has been like my child at Cavco, because when I came in, it just hasn't been done. There really aren't any housing manufacturers that also have a program for homeownership for their employees. And so I was asked to start from scratch. And there was a lot of trial and error. We didn't want to replicate what was being done on the nonprofit side with groups like Chicago's Product Outside, who are already offering first-time home buyer benefits. But there was great regulation across, you can imagine, all 50 states. But trying to meet factory workers where they're at, trying to understand like after they get off their shift and how tired they are and exhausted, and trying to say, look, there's a path forward for you. If we can work on your credit, work on your budgeting and saving, and in turning the ship around, it's been really exciting. We've this year, every 2 weeks, we've had an employee buy a home, and that's while I balanced it at the state legislature. And so building it from nothing to like a well-oiled machine has been really exciting.
Cool. Okay. I want to jump into some core issues facing the district, and let's start with education. I want to start real broadly. What is your plan to increase funding for Arizona public schools? And please be as specific as possible. Or alternatively, do you think Arizona public schools need more resources? And Flavia, why don't you start this one off for us?
Thank you. Well, serving on the Senate Education Committee, and unfortunately, what I've seen being in the legislative minority is that there are many unfunded mandates. There are curriculum changes. There are areas around things that I really support around classroom safety, but without real dollars. So I absolutely do believe that our public schools and district schools across District 26 and the state of Arizona do need more resources. Now, proudly, I can say the Alhambra Elementary School District, their teachers are some of the top paid in the state. And I've come to see that when I do site visits, when I visit their school board meetings. I've known teachers who live in the Paradise Valley and Scottsdale area come to Alhambra and teach. But across the board, Washington L, Isaac, parts of Glendale Elementary, parts of Osborne, and Phoenix Elementary, I do know that right now, there's still litigation around classroom facilities, and I believe the state of Arizona has a real obligation to make repairs, and that's including from our district all the way down to where my father was born in Ajo, Arizona. I mean, there are school districts that I've seen through the Joint Legislative Audit Committee. Buildings are crumbling, and we need to repair them. And sorry, my plan. I know you asked about how. My apologies. We do need to see a serious budget appropriation. On my website, you would see that I say we need to fully fund K through 12 schools. And a lot of times when we do have forums with the AEA, sometimes people ask, they'll say, well, what does that mean? Is there a dollar amount? I would say we have to return to the conversation where we were about eight years ago in 2018, when there was a real proposal to raise teacher pay after Red for Ed. But I would promote rolling back much of the fraud, waste, and abuse we're seeing with the ESA voucher program, restoring it to children with disabilities and special needs, and directing those funds to our public schools, because the state cannot subsidize both public and private education. I went to a private school. I went to Brophy. The voucher program did not exist because it would be unthinkable to think that parents who are already sending their kids to public or private school on scholarship would then need $7,000 from the state of Arizona. So the top earners, I know lobbyists at the Capitol who laugh and they say that's the most broken policy. But as long as the legislature and the Republican majority haven't fixed it, they're going to keep taking advantage of it.
Okay. And Jim, same question to you.
Wow, that was quite a strap on you got there. Well, let's start with the ESA part. Look, I didn't go to Brophy. I went to a public high school, but I sent my kids to Catholic school. And I did that with me and my wife both working a job and barely being able to afford it. And we were paying it out of pocket for a long time. When ESA came along, my girl wanted to go to Xavier. And for those people that don't know, Brophy and Xavier run about $18,000 a year. And that's not a college education. So if some of my tax money that goes into ESA goes to Xavier so that my kid can have that quality education, I'm still paying out of pocket. I'm just getting help from that ESA program. I'm not going to say that school choice or ESAs are the bad guy. Now, fraud, waste, and abuse, you can't convince me that that is the vast majority of an ESA. You might convince me that it exists. You might convince me that there's bad actors. And yes, for that, we need guardrails and oversight. But school choice and the ESA funding come out of my taxes anyway. And where would my taxes go if I didn't get an ESA? It'd go $9,000 a student in the district that I live in. So the money goes to the districts. The plan should be to cut fraud, waste, and abuse amongst the transfer of that money to the districts. Find the money. Yes, we need to pay teachers more. Come on, I'm a teacher. I know that. And in the classroom, actually, I work in a public school. I work in Washington School District. In my classroom, I've never wanted for supplies or things. Everyone's always bending over backwards. And then there are community organizations like Teachers Pay Teachers, Donors Choose, where I can get very cheap resources or have it even donated to me for free. So there are other mechanisms. I think it's all about getting streamlined in the districts. Some of the districts might not need as much money as they get. Some might need more than they get. But we need to really look at the budget. And because I don't have those numbers in front of me, I can't really have the crunch conversation with you. Do I think we need to do more appropriation, especially when we're talking about bonds and more debt? Because every time we put in more appropriation, more money, and we pass a bond, we're putting the debt on the people. Government doesn't have any money. Government only has the money that it takes from the people. So let's be good stewards of the money that we have and take care of education at home. Take care of it at home, families making good choices, going to public school, private school, wherever that choice is, being invested in their kids' learning so that they're not wasting the time in the classroom. We do all these things, I think we're going to be okay.
Jim, let me ask a quick follow-up here. Do you think that Arizona schools, like writ large, need more funding? Like, are we going to have to, you mentioned teacher pay as being an issue.
Sure.
Do we need to pay schools more so that they can pay teachers more, or should that be decided within the existing school budget, do you think?
I'd have to see the numbers on that, Hank. I mean, it would be very unfair for me to say, well, school needs 20 hamburgers and they have this much money to buy it. And then I have to know how much each hamburger costs. I mean, I know I'm being really hyperbole on this.
Sure.
And it's kind of superfluous. But the point is, if I don't have the numbers, I can't tell you whether we need more money in the schools from appropriations. I don't know what the full budget is. Do I think we need to pay teachers more? Sure. But do I know that there's not fat on the edges of everything? Lawsuits are a thing. I got a crazy parent who goes a lawsuit. And if I'm not in a union, right? So now the unions have to be involved to protect me, which costs money. That has to come from somewhere. So, we need to fix where the money comes from and how we get good family participation that makes good students who believe in our culture come to school for an education, get the education, don't waste any time. We don't have repeat students who drop out and have to come back. We don't have to create extra programs. But all of it comes down to knowing what's in front of us before we make a big leap to ask for more money.
Okay, fair enough. Anything you want to add, Flavio?
It's not fiscally responsible for a program like the ESA voucher program it's exceeded $1 billion. So I don't think it's a problem either. If 7,000 or you mentioned 9,000 of taxpayer funds going to a district school, property taxes are for law enforcement, for public safety, and for school districts. I mean, that is their purpose. Overwhelmingly, the thing is, when Governor Ducey implemented the universal voucher program, again, my greatest concern is that there was no salary cap. And so all the studies have shown that there's a concentration in Scottsdale and Paradise Valley, North Phoenix, of families who are already had their kids enrolled in private school. We're now getting $7,000 from that would have otherwise gone to a public school student.
Okay.
And that we represent Phoenix. Think about some of the legislators who come from Navajo Nation. There are no private school options for them. They are looking at me saying, why is Phoenix and so much sucking our resources dry? And I think, unfortunately, the program is off the rails.
Well,
and we need to flip the majority to reform it.
If I may. Okay,
Please.
You brought in Navajo Nation. There's no private schools. The private schools that are down here are pretty much privately funded, right? So there are opportunities that if an entrepreneur, privately funded to begin with, to bring a charter, right? And then the money goes to them through the ESA to the family so they can afford a school if it's for pay. Charters are free, actually. Private schools, someone could start a private school up on the reservation. They could do that. The opportunity is there. And by the way, Flavio, whose money is that $7,000 to $9,000 is going to the district? Where's that coming from? Is that coming from the taxpayer? Does it matter that it's property tax that was earmarked for a school that my kid's not going to go to? Does it matter?
Okay, I want to dive directly into ESAs because I feel like we're veering there anyway, naturally.
Okay.
But Jim, you said that people might be able to convince you that there is fraud in the program, and
Sure.
if so, we should rein that in. The Auditor General has found, a fair amount of anomalies, at very least, problematic spending from parents.
Sure.
And I want to ask, do you think we should put new guardrails around the ESA program as it exists? And if so, what new guardrails? And if not, explain that to voters why you don't think there should be new guardrails on this program.
Well, I do think, like, when you have your taxes and your tax guy comes over and he tells you the tax laws, he says, well, you can only do this much of this kind of deduction. So where Flavio, I kind of agree with him, is if you've got a really super wealthy person who can afford to do the private school thing, then they shouldn't be taking basically what amounts to people's money, the people's money. Yes, it's their money, I get it, but there should be some sort of need-based assessment. Maybe that could be one of the guardrails. But me personally, my wife and I combined don't make, what my, the wife of a Scottsdale entrepreneur plus, a 40-year retiree over there. We don't make the same kind of money. We're very middle class. So I feel like the $7,000, if I really wanted to tap it for my kid's education, I could. You'll be happy to know, though, my kid only went to Xavier for 1 year before she found it kind of not her speed, not what she wanted to do, not based on intelligence, but she didn't get along with the crowd, So she ended up at public high school. She's at Centennial. I've saved a lot of money. I feel good about that. And I don't have to use that 7,000. And because I live in the school district I teach in, my 7,000 for my property tax is going to my school district. Yeah, we need more guardrails, Hank. We do. We don't want to find the anomalies, but we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. School choice is great. And by the way, we may have this public system that needs a lot of attention, but we also have a very robust charter system, and we're among the tops in the country when it comes to charter education. So we can't ignore that school choice is a thing.
Okay. How about you, Flavio? What kind of new regulations would you vote to put on the program? Or let me even ask more broadly, would you vote to get rid of our universal voucher program completely and take it back to students with disabilities, students in failing schools? I think students on Native American reservations were part of that before the universal expansion. What should we be doing with this program?
The vendor that the state has gone with, it's called Class Wallet. They're, I think, bipartisan. They're serious bipartisan concerns for Class Wallet. It's got to go, and that's the start. I think in the JLAC, Joint Legislative Audit Committee, we have seen Lindsay Perry issue reports about how challenging it's been even for the Department of Ed to meet, like being willing to meet to discuss this issue. And I think that's because they're in fear of the Republican majority, that if we had a different governor, I believe the Republicans would just make a swift reform and move on. But they don't want to give Governor Hobbs a win. And that's horrifying, right? That they've chosen these partisan stances. But when I say repeal, I mean, I don't mean getting rid of all options, right? I would support restoring it back to what it was. I would support of the Protect Education ballot measure, and I saw the announcement from the Supreme Court, but that ballot measure really did have serious guardrails. I think it was a salary cap at 160,000 for a married couple, and filing taxes jointly. And at minimum, I think we do need to see a salary cap there, and we just don't need to be giving certain schools the ability to just increase their tuition rates by 7,000, knowing that it's going to be coming from the state.
Okay.
I can't disagree with that, Flavio. I do think there should probably be some sort of cap up there to keep us from giving money where, you want to give money based on need. When government does a public good, you want to do it based on need. So with you on that, I might be sort of bipartisan there, where I say that's one of the guardrails I'd definitely like to see. But I don't want to get rid of school choice. And I don't think we should get rid of the ability of the taxpayer to influence where their taxes go, at least in terms of education.
Like being down there, like Arizona has led on school choice with charter growth, and I don't think that's going away anytime soon.
Yeah.
Okay, so some needs-based restrictions. We've got a bipartisan agreement on that, our first of the night. All right, let's move on to heat. As Maryvale is hot. A lot of your constituents work outdoors. Do you think that the state should vote on some sort of an enforceable heat safety standard with real penalties for companies that don't meet those standards? And I think we started with Jim last time, so Flavio, kick this one off, will you?
So, on my mother's side, I grew up with my grandfather. He ran a masonry block wall company, and so many of my uncles, my grandfather, my cousins worked in welding. I would see them come home every day, just exhausted. I could see the long-term wear and tear on their bodies. Today, I actually spoke to the Service Employees International Union nationally on heat standards. So it's really interesting timing the question, because what I shared with them is that because the legislature hasn't acted swiftly enough. So Governor Hobbs and the League of Cities and Towns actually enacted a plan that this summer is the first time that it's being implemented around. It requires employers to provide the basics. When we talk about a heat standard plan, what's being implemented is they have to provide shade, water, and a place of rest. So it's kind of like a trial right now, but that makes all the difference. If we think of UPS workers that we see driving sometimes without any air conditioning in the vehicle, right? If we see day laborers, individuals, I mean, yesterday was 115 degrees outside. So I did hear the previous panel say that some thought it was government overreach. I don't think they understand what's being proposed. Like we're not it's not really government overreach. It's asking for the bare minimum and saying we don't want people dying. And employers have embraced that, I believe, because they also don't want their workers dying.
Hey,
That's
Jim,
fair.
what do you think?
Well, that's fair. That's fair. Nobody wants their people dying out in the heat, and I think it would be incumbent upon a employer to do those things, to provide those things. But I do think it's government overreach, Flavio, plain and simple. And here's why: that person has a choice to quit. This is a right to work state. They don't have to work for an employer that's going to enslave them in the heat. Okay, they can find another job. Now, I get some people can't just wave their wand and find another job. I understand what it's like to look for a job. I'm not saying that. Okay. But I think the minute you make a law that compels a business to follow certain strictures and regulations, you are going into sort of this government daycare sort of situation and taking the role of that voter not to make a vote for this law, but instead to choose where they work and what their profession is. I'm telling you, there's a reason I don't do landscaping, Flavio. I did it when I was 16 down in Tucson. I did it for about 3 weeks and I was like, this is not for me. It is not for me. And I went to do something else. Now, if you're saying people don't have a choice and that's where they have to work, well, I do believe that it would be criminal for them to be forced to work in a certain condition. And at that point, that's law we already have. If an employer as an individual endangers the life of someone else through their actions, we already have laws for that. And that person can file a complaint. Okay. We don't need Arizona to step in and say, if you're a landscaping business, you have to have 5 jugs of water on the truck. You have to have an extendable awning off your truck so that you're always providing shade. You see what I'm saying? You're incurring expense on a small business in exchange for the compassion you want to have. We can't govern that way. We have to govern with common sense, get people to get jobs that they want. If they're being endangered, they need to learn how to use the system to call out the bad actors. On the other side of the fence, I'm glad we're planting more trees. I heard that in the last segment. Oh my God, we're planting more trees. That's great. I also want to point out Maryvale is a very old area of town. It used to have a mall at 51st and Indian School. They converted a lot of those mall into other uses, but you know what they left behind? A bunch of asphalt everywhere and cement everywhere. And they didn't plant enough trees over the years. So in addition to planting those trees, maybe we should start digging up some of that asphalt, planting some grass or something, or maybe if not grass, because that would take up extra water, at least taking it down to a different biome that would give off less heat. And the other thing about the heat in the valley that keeps getting ignored, everyone's talking about Maryvale's hot. We have a big heat island in the middle of our city called Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. Now, I'm not saying we have to move that thing, but come on. That thing is like 5-6 square miles of cement, and it has jets going in and out. And the average temperature out on the tarmac has got to be somewhere 140, 150 degrees. And it sits that way for 6 months a year. Well, yeah, we got a heat island. Maryvale's hot because it's only 3 or 4 miles from Sky Harbor, plus a bunch of cement. So I have compassion for people. I think we should totally make sure they get food, water, shelter, shade, rest, relaxation. But that also comes with, I don't have to do that job. Or if I'm being abused, I can report my abuser.
If I can offer an example of a standard that actually passed. It was bipartisan, led by my colleague Sandra Annalise Ortiz. In many ways, it was a heat standard policy because all it did was it allowed public construction workers, so construction workers for public contracts, to start their work earlier in the day. There was previously a prohibition based off of neighborhood that they would have to wait until maybe 8 a.m. or 7:30. Coming from a family construction, you always race to get out of the house before the sun rises because it's cooler in the summer. That's all her proposal did, and it passed. It was signed by the governor. allowing them to start at an earlier rate. I mean, that's a heat standard bill, right? So I think
I like
we
that.
were evolving at the state capitol. Like we're finding ways. We're known for innovation, chip manufacturing, but that also means we can't escape that Phoenix is very hot and people do need to be protected.
Well, I would say that you're correct on that. And we have another bipartisan, Hank. Here we go. Yeah, and Flavio, this is nothing new. Okay. When I started working, again, past the landscaping, jack of all trades, when you're a graphic designer, you have jobs everywhere because you don't always have regular clients. One of my stops is I did cable contracting. I got to work at 4:30 in the morning, and we went out and really trucks, and we were doing construction jobs at 4 or 5 in the morning. 5 is a good standard. And if you hear hammers in your neighborhood, if you hear construction and you're the kind of citizen that's going to complain about it, I would say that, I'm on your side. I understand your sleep is being disturbed, but I also understand I live in Arizona and I should come to expect that public works are going to be done when it's cool and convenient. So I'm with you on that.
Okay, look at that. This is the most bipartisan debate we've had in a little bit. Let's talk about housing a little bit. Who or what do you each think is primarily to blame for Arizona's housing crisis? I don't think anyone disagrees that rents are getting out of control, but what do you think is the driving factor here? And add to that, what's the first bill you would push to address that? And Jim, I think you're up first on this round.
Wow. So listening to the previous conversations, rent control came up. No, I don't want the government telling landlords what to do. Again, this is even worse than that whole working in the heat thing, because people can't just up and pull up stakes and move when the rent gets too high. I get that. There should be a standard, though, an evaluation. Maybe you don't have rent control, but, maybe you have some sort of ombudsman or something that can look into the rent cost of something and then do an audit on the landlord. Fine, you're charging this much rent. Great, that's your right to do so. But are you making the facility worth what you're renting? Not telling them they can't charge the rent, but telling them that they have the responsibility to maintain their facility. And I'm pretty sure we have laws about that too, slumlord laws. So I don't know that we need any more rent control. Now, as far as inventory goes, I got to tell you, Hank, I'm with my colleagues on it. Look, immigration is the whole white elephant no one wants to talk about when it comes to housing supply, and zoning is the other one. Okay, we have a lot of overcrowded neighborhoods because people can't afford to get a new house. But in those overcrowded neighborhoods, we're overcrowding our zoning. And now all of a sudden you have this property devaluation because it's causing blight. When we overpopulate a neighborhood, blight happens, property values go down, should make the stuff more affordable, but no one wants to move because they're there, they're in their own house. But then it's not attractive to move there. No one wants to build there. No one wants to create new opportunities for housing there. And our whole district is suffering from the blight of the crime and the property crime and the prostitution and everything that's happening. So how are you going to create more housing? You're going to build apartment complexes that are in the middle of these places where no one wants to be because it's crime ridden. Sorry, there's a fly right there. Look, we have too many people, and there's a little immigration thing going on. There are legal ones, there are illegal ones, and if we didn't have the illegal ones, no offense, we'd have more housing available because we wouldn't be taking it up with people that probably shouldn't be here on the path that they've come. Not that they shouldn't be here, not that they're not valued, but coming through the front door kind of a thing. So I probably fumbled that, but go ahead, Flavio.
Flavio, what do you think? Do you agree with Jim's assessment of the problem, or what's yours? And how do we solve it?
I have continuously, so for 4 years, I have co-sponsored and also supported zoning reform bills at the state capitol, whether it be from Senator Steve Kaiser this past year, Senator Shana Bullock, my own colleagues like Senator Ortiz or previously Senator Hernandez. It's an issue that we're seeing a bipartisan agreement, but also bipartisan disagreement. I mean, Hank has probably counted the votes of how close it's been before a bill on housing is passed. What I will say is, and my father worked at the city of Phoenix for 34 years. So when I meet with the city and they tell me about the importance of local control, I get it. I have so much pride for the city, but I also know that there are bills that I've supported, such as accessory dwelling unit and backyard casita expansion, that at first that came off as hostile. But then after a legislative session passed, suddenly cities on their own were passing their own measures to legalize it. And that's kind of the impact of the legislature that I've seen, even from serving the minority, is that sometimes the conversation seems at first radical and kind of high reaching, but then once constituents and our residents and stakeholders realize how viable it really is, then you start seeing local communities really lead on it. I mean, this past year, a separate issue, but we saw flock cameras. I serve on government committee, and the chair of the committee was trying already to introduce bills on flock. Right now, in the last week, we've had 3 cities already end their partnerships with flock. So on housing, I do support zoning reform. I do believe it's a housing supply issue, but also an affordable housing issue, because we're the first state in the country that didn't renew our low-income housing tax credit. Even Alabama and Mississippi have a LIHTC program that they've continued. It's the only incentive developers have to build affordable housing. In our district, we have the Glendale, which prioritizes housing for veterans and seniors. We have Rehoboth, the Affordable Housing Center on 27th Avenue. Sometimes my Republican colleagues will tell me that, well, when we have funded the Housing Trust Fund, where does the money go? I can show them the literal district projects that our constituents are benefiting from those dollars.
Okay. I want to squeeze in one more before we start moving on to the explain your vote section. And Jim, you brought up immigration as a factor in our, housing market. So I want to address that directly. Where's the line for each of you on state and local police cooperation with federal immigration enforcement? Essentially, should a Phoenix police officer hand somebody over to ICE, and under what circumstances? Are we talking jaywalking or, violent criminals that should be turned over to ICE? And Jim, I think you went first last time, so Flavio?
I'm proud to have been endorsed by the Arizona Law, Arizona Police Association, and the Fraternal Order of Police. But I also know that the city of Phoenix has issued very clear guidance saying that it's not their job to enforce federal immigration laws. And historically, we've seen 287G agreements adopted through the sheriffs or Maricopa County, but the city of Phoenix repeatedly has said they do not enforce federal immigration laws because that's the federal government's job. And in the past, when law enforcement there have been lawsuits and litigation. Maricopa County, the reason I believe Sheriff Penzone stepped away from the job is just because it was very difficult for him to even do the job under the oversight for all of the wrongdoings of Sheriff Joe Arpaio. So, but where I do know the city of Phoenix is leading on is they are still prioritizing child sex trafficking crimes, issues that are of grave concern. But what I have seen, and I think many people across the country have seen with ICE horribly, is that the push and the rush to hire so quickly meant that they were putting a lot of people in the streets who were not trained. And granted, they were wearing a uniform, but suddenly that put a lot of our police officers in a very difficult position because law enforcement, and especially City of Phoenix Police, I believe, is trying to maintain the best relationship possible, but suddenly you start confusing one with the other. And police officers had to come out and say, look, this is a group that actually is going to damage our reputation because of how quickly the growth was, and just being dispatched to states like Minnesota and to Chicago for what we saw. I believe the reason we haven't seen that same level of dispatch is because City of Phoenix Police, I think, is doing the best that it can.
I don't know if I got an actual answer on that, though. Should Phoenix Police hand over people who are here without the proper documentation to ICE in any circumstance?
What I was trying to explain by what they are doing is that I don't believe so, because they've made that commitment right now that unless somebody was committing a violent crime, whether it be child sex trafficking, kidnapping, extortion, then they will get involved. But I don't believe, no, if somebody is of mixed status and they are walking their child to school, I don't believe that's a City of Phoenix or any city municipality's job to really intervene and disrupt their entire day.
Okay, but I did hear like violent criminals. You're okay with Phoenix police if there are violent criminals who are here not legally, Phoenix police should be able to turn them over to ICE? Did I understand that
Violent
correctly?
criminal, I mean, violent criminals absolutely need to be held accountable, and that's what's happening right now in practice. I do appreciate the City of Phoenix issued guidance because it can be blurred and it can be confusing for many people to read and knowing who should they trust.
Okay. How about you, Jim? What do you think?
So I think there's a lot of levels to this. I think at its core, ICE is law enforcement. We're supposed to follow the laws. And that's what they're doing. They're enforcing immigration law. Regardless of whether I think they're the most professional group that's ever been hired or not, that's what they're doing. Do I think the Phoenix police should just turn over everybody willy-nilly? Just, hey, they're illegal, go. They're illegal, go. Yes, but no. And I'm going to clarify that. I'm going to qualify that. The lady walking her kid to school, if there's a reason that ICE has found her, it's usually going to be because she's risen closer to the top of being, identified, wanted, and all that. So, ICE is probably going to do that job themselves. They probably wouldn't involve Phoenix police officers other than to have the cooperation to not have the general public be involved to interfere with the mission. As far as violent crime goes, any crime, that's crime, okay? Violent property, it doesn't matter. The police should be allowed to do their job. We're seeing a lot of crime that's on the street that has nothing to do with illegals, and the police aren't even able to do their job. Are you telling me, the guys who are smoking fentanyl underneath their shirt, why aren't we picking those guys up? We know what they're doing. We're not stupid, okay? So if Phoenix is doing their job and you have a violent criminal who happens to be an illegal, yes, if they do that and they're illegal, yeah, they should be turned over to ICE. That's kind of a no-brainer. They're not here legally. They did commit a crime, so they're already infringing on the society. So why wouldn't we turn them over? Why wouldn't we? All right. Now, I'm not saying go after kids, and I really don't want to see ICE officers show up at my school. I don't think that's an appropriate venue for it. I think if they're going to seize somebody that they wish to deport because they have the legal authority to do that, it shouldn't be in a setting where it disrupts public life. It should be wherever that person's staying, God forbid, and hopefully, we don't have a lot of that. I just wish people would come here legally with the intention of assimilation. We wouldn't even be having this discussion if people would just use the front door. Do we have an immigration system that might be a little broken? We need some reform, maybe. But I know that when we don't have hundreds of thousands of people pouring over unvetted, we're also not getting military-age terrorists. We're not getting, drug traffickers. We're not getting all those people if we keep control of the situation. Yes, I think ICE and our law enforcement should be working together cooperatively, but staying in their stages so that if it's violent crime, yes, Phoenix police needs to prosecute for the crime like they normally would, apprehend, the court system needs to prosecute that crime, and then that person be turned over for possible deportation if that's found what needs to happen. In a civil way, where I've got the little lady walking her daughter to school, I don't know. If ICE comes to do their job, the public shouldn't get in the way. It's unfortunate, but no, I don't believe the cops should be looking for the kid walking to school. That's way beyond the pale. And I'm sure the police officers probably feel the same way.
Okay. I want to move on to
one thing. Two
yeah,
things.
yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Flavio.
I think, putting maybe some of the things I'm saying might be obvious, but the reason that we were even hypothetically thinking about a mother walking her child to school and being apprehended is because of this ridiculous quota that the Trump administration is putting on daily ICE apprehensions and deportations. And so the people have to come from somewhere. So when, as a legislator who represents, a district with 64 languages spoken, the highest concentration of refugees in the state who are Arizonans in every single way and have a path to citizenship, like that, their fear is real because that's what we're seeing across the country in other communities.
Very quickly, Jim. Yep.
Flavia, I don't operate on fear. If they're here legally, they're refugees and they're here legally, everything's in order, there's nothing to fear. So I'm not going to stoke those flames by saying, oh, there's all these people with all these languages. That's great. I don't really speak a foreign language. I speak enough Spanish to get by, find the bathroom and those sort of things. But I don't think any of that intersectionality you just mentioned has anything to do with the mission. Now, as far as living in fear, well, maybe if the media wouldn't blow it up, and make it into something it's not, it's been mentioned in the previous conversations that Biden, Clinton, not Biden. Biden's the other way. Clinton, Obama, all these other administrations did far more deportation than's happening now. Okay.
But what we're seeing is cruel right now because October 1st, save the date, October 1st, refugees in the United States, even who have done everything right and have filed an application for a green card and were invited to come here based off of persecution, they're actually going to be ineligible for Medicaid. As of January 1st, they were ineligible for SNAP benefits. These are people that have so I want you to know that their fear is real and their frustration.
Wait a minute. Why is there an expectation, Flavio, that people who are refugees coming in automatically get our social programs? Why is that even an expectation?
And they have lawful work authorization. They've come to the US lawfully.
Great.
So that is their right. When you have US work authorization, you typically that comes with the benefits that you enjoy as a taxpayer.
Sure. Okay, they get those sort of benefits. Is it a lump sum? Is there a payout? I don't get a payout.
No, it's a contribution to that they're contributing to our state. But I'm just saying that is unjust, and that is unlike any administration before.
We don't have to live in fear.
That's the result of HR 1.
It's not fear, man. And fine. If you have this one little, and I'm saying little because over the course of history, we're talking a long history of the country. We're talking even the last 20 years. If you're talking about one segment on one date, a small group of population that this unfortunately happened to, and maybe we need to rectify that, Flavio, maybe, but we shouldn't be operating in terms of fear. In fact, you parroting it on here to bring it as a stoke point, no offense, it's a debate.
The public. These are our constituents.
Sure.
These are our constituents. It's not, look, like,
but what do you want them to do?
When something makes the news, it is an effort to educate the community. It's not to stoke fear.
I stand educated. But I'm just saying, the part about the district and the fear thing and people living in fear, if they're here, they shouldn't.
That's the reality.
Well, I live in reality.
They're pushed into the shadows because they're still working, still providing, doing everything right. You just mentioned that you wish people would come into the U.S. the right way. Refugees, they check the box every single way, but yet they are disproportionately being discriminated against right now.
Where are those refugees from?
That's a federal policy decision. Like Eli Crane, Andy Biggs.
Sure, it's a federal position.
They voted for HR 1. They didn't have to.
I get it.
And because of that, but they did. And so that's the fight you would have to face at the state legislature, is trying to protect, because the Republicans down there are arrogant enough to believe that they don't have to follow the U.S. Constitution or federal law, but they also can tell the cities what to do. And that is the great challenge.
Well, fortunately for you, I'm a very big Constitution sort of guy. So,
okay, gentlemen, I want to keep this moving. I appreciate the spirited back and forth, but we are running a little bit low on time here. And I do want to talk a little bit about how you're going to vote yourselves this November. We've got a bunch of questions on the ballot. I think all of them referred by the legislature to the ballot. And probably one of the most controversial ones that you'll see on your ballot is Proposition 318. That's the proposition. It's a legislatively referred statutory change. It would require every school and athletic association to designate sports teams as either male, female, or co-ed based on a student's biological sex as defined at birth, and would require that schools not allow anyone to use a restroom, locker room, or shower or other private space that isn't designated for their sex as listed on their birth certificates. Flavio, how are you going to vote on this one?
I will be voting no on Prop 318, but also all legislative ballot referrals at the state legislature, because by nature of a ballot referral, they did this, the majority Republicans, to circumvent Governor Hobbs. They knew this policy would be vetoed. Senator Kavanaugh's repeated proposals to police kids in bathrooms has been vetoed. And I serve on a committee with him, and repeatedly I've asked him, with high school students in the room, where has this ever been an issue in the state of Arizona? And he has lifted up the newspaper and said, well, look what's happening in Portland. Look what's happening in this state. We serve Arizonans. I have no idea. This never happened in Arizona. This is a policy that was handpicked to bully transgender kids, and I think that's horrible.
How about you, Jim?
I disagree. I don't think it has anything to do with bullying transgender kids, as you want to say that. I can tell you're not a parent. I have two.
I am a parent.
Daughters.
So your
Okay,
research.
well, do you have daughters?
I have 3 nieces and a beautiful baby boy.
Boy, right, cool. When you have a daughter, okay, and I have 2, all right, I don't ever want to see a biological male sharing a bathroom, a locker room, or anything with my daughters, okay? And I don't think it's unreasonable to have that. Now, a transgender student can think what they want, okay? I'm good with that. If they want to say they're a boy, they're a boy. If they want to say they're a girl, even if the opposite is true biologically. If they want to say that, if they want to operate under that conviction, knock themselves out. But they don't get to alter the reality of the living spaces we live in. Those are real spaces. You're really a guy. I'm really a guy. And the last thing that any woman's going to want is me or you to get a hair in our brain that says we believe a certain way and then walk into my wife's bathroom. Okay? That doesn't fly. I don't understand what's so hard to understand about that. I'm not saying that person can't be transgender, Flavio. They just don't get to use the private spaces, the ones that are designated for modesty, the ones where girls go in there and talk and 2 girls can, whatever. Now, I'm also not going to get into LGBT politics inside with same sex. It's not my business. But I know this, I'm not going to take the actual physical reality of a guy and handle letting my senior in high school's locker room have a guy walk in. And I don't know about you, but every time I had a boys team play a girls team in any sport, the boys wiped the floor with the girls. Now, if it's a co-ed sport, there's some fairness to that. And I've done that too. I've been a coach for that. But I will never, ever understand how a biological male who's a mediocre athlete can suddenly declare they're a girl and go and compete against girls. There's been plenty of documentation on that too. So I'm voting yes on that.
Okay. Let's do a couple of quick rapid fire questions here. Take 10, 15 seconds each. One word is fine. Let's do a fun one and a serious one. What one word would your friends use to describe you? Flavio?
As passionate.
Jim?
You stole mine. Invested is a good one.
Okay. Second question. Do you believe that your vote has always been counted accurately and fairly when you voted? Flavio?
Yes, and even today I received a text from the Maricopa County Recorder's Office that my ballot by mail is being prepared and that it should be delivered by October 7th in time for the general election. So yes, even when I've lived as a college student out of state, I never missed an Arizona election voting by mail.
Jim?
I believe in exceptions, but I never had any problem believing it when I was walking to a polling booth in a precinct, casting my vote, and I saw the end of the vote at the end of the night. I start to have doubts when we're counting our votes for 2 and 3 weeks, when a computer's doing the tabulation, when we get ballot dumps in the middle of the night, lots of ballots that suddenly appear, and I'm watching the TV and I'm watching 2 numbers, and all of a sudden this guy's number goes, boom, up 3,000. And I'm like, oh my God, how did that happen? It's like 18 hours after the polls closed. So do I think my ballot's being counted? I hope so.
Okay. Let's move on to closing statements. Take about 90 seconds to make your final case to voters. Jim, why don't you start us off, please?
Thank you. As a veteran, a teacher, a father, and a longtime Arizonan, my life has been defined by service and responsibility. Over decades in this state, I have never seen the disconnect between leadership and daily life grow wider than it is today. While our leaders engage in endless political drama, working families are dealing with the fallout. We have skyrocketing costs of living, daily essentials, housing, and utilities are squeezing household budgets like never before. We have a strain on dwindling resources. Rapid population influx is overtaxing our infrastructure and threatening our water security with little proactive planning from the top. There has been minimal action on growing crises. We have critical needs in public education, public safety, and resource management. LD26 is in the heart of the city and the state. And we know from daily experience that these things have received reactive half measures instead of long-term strategies. Arizona doesn't need more theater. We need leaders willing to do the homework, make clear decisions, own the results, and get the job done. Disagreement never has to become hatred, but we must demand accountability from our government. Listening to our opponents' views on what our country is and how it was founded a few minutes ago was kind of laughable. I feel like none of them have ever cracked a history book, and if they did, I don't think they read it very well. Lots of emotion, no facts. The United States started in 1776, and all our principles started then. Slavery didn't begin here, and Republicans ended it. There have been more white people enslaved by Africans over the years than the other way around in this world. I'm not running to play political games. I'm running to serve Arizona and Legislative District 26, protect our quality of life, and secure a sustainable future for our families. My parents told me to remember where I came from too, and those are the people that I represent. Thank you for having me in this debate, and thank you to our opponents. You all have a good night.
Thanks for being here, Jim. Flavio, your closing remarks?
Good evening, and thank you to everybody for listening to tonight's conversation. It's been the greatest honor to serve in the state legislature over the last 4 years, to represent the district where I was born and raised, where my parents even got to vote for me, where I became a first-time home buyer, and where now I live with my wife and our baby boy. And I want you to know that I do represent proudly all District 26 constituents, whether they're Democrat, Independent, or Republican. I have continuously worked across the aisle. And this year, I led bipartisan legislation that was signed by Governor Hobbs that puts real accountability on buyers of sex in the state of Arizona. We are the 8th state in the country that makes it a felony to pay for prostitution in the state of Arizona, and even adds a $200 assessment to go towards shelters for victims of sex trafficking. And I do that because I live at 31st Avenue. The Blade, and what's real about 27th Avenue and going to the district coalition meetings means that the legislature needed to act. I'm proud to have helped pass this policy with Representative Bliss to get bipartisan support for it, but the work is just beginning. I ask for your vote again this November to serve an additional 2 years in the state legislature so I can continue to serve and lead with dignity. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes tonight's Arizona Citizens Clean Elections debate for Legislative District 26. To all our candidates, thank you again for making the time to be here tonight. And to the voters who tuned in and informed themselves ahead of the November 3rd election, good luck, and thank you for being here. For more official voter information, visit azcleanelections.gov, and have a great night.